Hello, people. This week I read Empires of Light. This is sort of a history on. I thought it was going to be the Electric Wars, but it's more along the lines of how electrification sort of came to be. And I think it's a good subject to cover. I don't think. I think it's easy to forget how monumental a moment for civilization electricity and the light bulb were. And I know it focuses on the light bulb, but it really is about electricity. The fact that these things, this computer, right? All of this stuff works because of electricity. And without it, it'd be a completely different world. So we start with J.P. Morgan. Now, if you don't know, J.P. Morgan was big time. I mean, one of the richest dudes ever. Bailed out America at some point with just money from his own pocket. Just rich as all get out. And he was the first house in New York, I believe, to be electrified, to have electricity. He could turn a knob and the light would turn on in his house. Very cool. Now, what you have to remember is it's the 1800s and there's no electrical anything. So you have to do the whole system right there on site. That is an electric generator right over here that's steam powered. You're shoveling coal in, there's black smoke, steam generators can blow up, so there's always that. There also needed to be a guy on site 24/7, but he didn't stay 24/7, so sometime in the afternoon when he went home, the lights would just turn off because I can't stay all day anyway. Which might have been a mistake on Edison's part, not to just leave a guy there all the time. I mean, it's not like J.P. Morgan can't afford it. But it was a bright white light. It was just light. It wasn't. What did they have in their house before? What they had would have been. They had lamps. I think I read once there was portable lamps, which just sounds cool to me. I think it's a little pocket-sized little thing that you can turn on while you're in a carriage or something. But they would have mostly oil, literally whale oil. And you'd have problems with change the wick out, soot, build up, smoke. You could have rooms running out of oxygen because there's an open flame. And it's just, to me, it's kind of crazy to think about. J.P. Morgan would have had it. He was rich. But just that's the idea that we light our stuff with whale oil. I'm like, is there enough whales? I'm like, probably not. They didn't think about that. But this also gives us a little bit of an insight into the era itself. Because despite all of those negatives, which you think a rich guy wouldn't want to deal with, J.P. Morgan wanted to. And he wanted to because it was sort of a revolutionary time. There was all these new things happening. And it was a way for him to show this lack of fear. Look how much courage I have. I can bring this new thing that's electricity right into my house. It lights my way down the hall. My wife can mess with it. And Vanderbilt had been offered it. And his wife's like, no, I don't want that steam engine there. It's horrible. It might blow up. And he was seen sort of as cowardly compared to J.P. Morgan because he didn't take on this new challenge to the world, It gives me a sense as to that time, which I wish I would have got more of from this book. These are my only two negatives, and they're very slight. And it's sort of sidetracked sometimes our author gets, wherein we leave our main issue, electricity, and we'll talk about like Grover Cleveland or some famous person dying, right? This kind of thing. It's interesting. There's interesting stuff that happens in this era. Very interesting era. So I understand it. Again, it doesn't ruin the book. You're not going to go, I'm tossing this book. It's horrendous. There's also ambiance. There was a time when the street lights, let's say at a department store or something to this effect, were going to change from oil to electricity. These lights are going to glow. I don't know. He didn't sell that enough. Not sell. He didn't describe it enough. You could put the reader there in that moment. What was that like for these people walking down the street? And there's this new glow to the city. It's not day, it's night. How would that have affected you, right? More of this, I think it should have been put in. I don't think that's wasteful. I think it helps us understand what's happening to people, why they're doing it, this kind of thing. We then go into sort of, I believe it's like a chapter, maybe two. Might have been just one chapter. It's a good solid chapter about some of the history of electricity, how we got from here to where we end up, the focus of our book. And it's this, Dutch guy here, the English guy there, all these people bouncing around, coming up with these new ideas. But in the course of it, they had something called the dangling electrified boy. And it just made me laugh, because I've seen this now a couple of times in this era, 1800s. I don't know why. Some new thing happens. I think there was one, and they're like, I can lift this child up 40 feet in the air with this hot air balloon at a baseball game. And they'd grab a child who's like 9 and just do stuff with the kid like it's a prop. And I'm always just looking like, 1800s, can y'all calm down with putting of children in risk? Can you do that? And they're like, nah, he weighs 45 pounds. All the other adults are too heavy. I have no option. It's very funny. They'd get this kid and kind of hook him up to the electrode things that they had. And of course his hair stands on end. I mean, I think it was essentially, that little electrical ball that you can look at the store? I think it's the equivalent of that. As to amount of juice it's putting out. It's not going to kill anyone. So his hair would go out, and if you get close, he might zap you. It wasn't that big a deal, but it was like a crowd pleaser. Electricity was in that state until, your boy Ben Franklin shows up, which he did have something to do with this. And it's his old key experiment. It's running the kite in a thunderstorm. And what I didn't know is he had just wrote that in an almanac. Like, this experiment might be cool. And then later he tries it. Well, some French dudes got the almanac, and they tried it before he did. So technically, they did it first. But they did his experiment. So, history gives him the credit, but some other French dudes did it first. And then, of course, because it's a highfalutin time, and everyone's getting after it. A dude in, like, Holland tries the same experiment. He runs the kite up, but he gets the full sauce from a thunderstorm. He dead. He's the first one to die of this mess. I read this story when I was little, and I'm like, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal was that this man connected that little static from the little boy experiment to these massive bolts that come out of the sky. These are the same, I guess, material. Electricity. It's the same thing. Steps in the science. Very monumental moment. Your next real monumental moment the book gives is to Michael Faraday. And I don't think this fool's talked about enough. Top tier genius. On the list with all the greats. He really was a genius. And there is a distinction here between very smart, which I think, like your Edison was. He's intelligent, and genius. Genius is the thing that cracks through. It can do these logical jumps that can, save civilization decade upon decade. It really is. Faraday, Isaac Newton, Tesla, geniuses. Faraday discovered benzene, among other chemicals. He discovered how to liquefy gases. He discovered how to magnetically make electricity. And he did all with magnetically make electricity, and he did all of these things at the same time. One guy would comment that it was amazing that nothing could pull any of his genius down. So if he was focused on chemistry, his brain could still focus on electricity at the same time. And he'll make this breakthrough, and 2 days later that one, because he was doing both at the same time. It's incredible. He also, at that time, I think 1700s, I want to say, but I'm not exactly sure about the dates. He could have been very rich and famous on a few of these discoveries. Just on one or two, the king would have set you up nice in England. But he turned all of it down every time. He didn't want the social pull that would have come with that, meaning the Lord and such has to show up to such and such event and host such and such parties. He didn't want anything distracting him. And he also, I don't think he wanted to continue working rather than just sit and be rich, which is unusual, obviously. And this is another thing that's interesting about Michael Faraday that they bring up. He considered himself a philosopher. This ties right in with the ancient Greeks. Their scientists, Pythagorean, etc. They didn't consider themselves scientists. They considered themselves philosophers. And what Faraday said is, a philosopher, what does he say? Should be open at all times to all ideas. He should be willing to judge for himself. He should hold no hypothesis. He should have no biases. He should belong to no school. He should be his own master. And I was listening to that, and I'm like, we need more of that in science today. We need more people untethered to their, I guess, schooling. A mathematician today is just fully to the minutia obsessed with math, as opposed to opening his eyes and letting more things come at him. And that's why I think the philosopher label works better than, I guess, even a scientist. To say my ultimate goal is just truth. I have no other goal. Same as a doctor is do no harm and you just heal. I don't care if they're Nazis or if it's the Pope. I see an open wound, I'm going to try and patch it up. We need more science like this. The dude lived above the Royal Institute in England. He would give constant lectures to children just on, here's how a candle is made, or whatever science thing he was working on. He was able to break it down so kids can understand. And he was always trying to plant seeds. So if any of these kids, he's like, you don't know which one's going to be the one that figures the thing out. So he's always very excited with. He also said one other thing that was very cool. And it was when asked, here is how you liquefy a gas, which is just wild to me. He presents that. He's like, here, take it. And they look at it and they go, what is this good for? He said what Ben Franklin would say. He said, when they say, what use is this? He would go, what use is a baby? And I thought that was just one of the coolest lines ever. A baby is useless. Can't do anything. And yet, it's all the potential in the world. Yeah? Every baby can be Napoleon, can be Faraday, can be Tesla, can just sit on the couch. It's all the things can happen because of this baby. But as it's sitting there, it can't even feed itself. What use is it? It's another cool thing about this time, though, as a side note. We're this time frame got a lot of stuff named. So, like, the Faraday effect. This is when the dudes work on those high voltage electrical lines. You touch it with this pole, then you're part of the flow. Meaning, an amount of electricity that can kill you is flowing around you, and you're not hurt, and it flows on down the line and powers Chicago. The Faraday effect. But his name was Michael Faraday. The history's full of that. It's like Johann Volt. Like, his name's Volt, as in voltage? Yes. The Postus Eris. You're like, from like Post cereal? Yes. It's full of this. The era is just so fun. We go from that sort of into the root of our focus, our story, which is Edison, Westinghouse, Tesla, and the electric wars. We get a short history on Edison, and it's... You see the salesman. So, he, like I said, he was intelligent. There's no doubt about this. But he didn't look at anything for what it was. He looked at it for how it could make him money. And how can I and scale it up and be big and make money. Nothing wrong with this. But he did try and sell himself like, I'm the mad genius here. I can just think of things all the time. And from a distance you can see, you see the act sort of happening. But here's where some of the age could have helped in being described. Because he's not unusual. I was mentioning post, Kellogg. This was an era where one idea, you could invent cola. You could invent a zipper. One idea, if you got it to hit, you go from just a normal person to a titan in an industry that didn't exist. You could make a whole new industry, and you're just richer than the Queen of England. The era is full of this, and it explains a lot about Edison. I think if he had given us more of that, he's doing what everyone else was doing in the era. Let me look into what the things that I know, and how I can use those in ways other people can't, and make myself big time. His was the light bulb. He invented that light bulb. He showed it to people. Money starts rolling in. What's funny is you sort of see also the stages. He had at one point a bamboo light bulb. The filament inside was bamboo. He tried wool, paper, string. He tried whatever he could do to put in that filament. Of course it'd last 30 minutes. It'd last an hour. He got one to last like 6 days. He thought he was doing great. But he invested heavily in DC. That he was selling these DC machines. And these light bulbs were the sell. Right? You can get this light bulb, but it needs this other stuff. The idea then springs up. Now, I always thought Tesla invented this, but there was some nuance here. The idea for an AC current then springs up. Some Italian guys. Forget his name. It's something electrical. It really is. Like Gage or Geiger. Some weird like Voltenstein. It's some kind of electric name. I don't remember. 2 electric guys had invented a AC kind of system. It's a way to send it out in a wave. Hit this transformer, bring it down to safe, send it deeper, bring it back up. However you need to do. They had the system, and Westinghouse, being an industrialist, got a hold of this system. He says, this looks like this could work. So he starts pushing that. Now, obviously, Edison didn't want anything to do with that because he didn't have any ownership in it. He sees it as a threat to his industry, not as a man of science. It's pretty telling. This is all happening. Enter a young Nikola Tesla. Just flat out genius of his time. Probably genius of our time. I believe there's a story where he says that he picked up the family cat and it shocked him. Like static. And then for his brain connected that to mean that maybe the electricity fills the whole universe. Like his brain just jumps to that. Stupid smart. He had a dream, like a vision in his head, of an electric motor that is like a windmill and the water paddles it. He paddles a motor with waves of electricity. He had it in his head. He didn't write it down. He didn't need to. He just remembered it in his head. He had the whole system worked out, how it would work with a transformer, how the engine would work, the less than no moving parts, the whole thing. Wrap this in copper, etc. So he then goes to France, I believe, and gets a job with Edison Europe, which, again, I didn't know. I thought he came to America and hung out with Edison instantly. He didn't. Edison had incorporated and gone international. Again, big money. And so in walks this guy, and he's fixing these things that Edison has. Here's a chandelier that lights up. Yeah, I can fix that. I can fix this generator. And he starts talking to his coworkers like, what about this idea? And they're like, that sounds like, why do I need to do any of that? I have DC right here. They did not see it whatsoever. They did not understand. He thought because they work in electricity, they got to understand like I do, but they didn't. He keeps talking about it. One of the guys kind of likes it, and he ends up going to New York, right? He sends him to New York, wherein he meets Edison. And again, Edison's the same. He's not trying to talk about AC current. He said it's dumb. He said it's dangerous. He said it'll never work. He said, you just stick to this thing. Very flippant about it. And what's funny about this for Edison, to me, is Tesla is more like a Faraday. If you would have said, give me X, Y, and Z, and I'll give you this space, and you can just tinker with stuff. And then when you come with me, we'll both put it into production, and we'll share some of the money. You could have said that, and you'd have had the smartest person in the world just cranking out new stuff for you, and who knows what would have happened. You'd have had all the newest stuff. Like he could have been, what is it, Harley Davidson? He makes the bikes, you just sell them. It could have been that. Instead, you were very flippant about it. And I think ego got in the way. I think because he was such in the limelight, Edison, that a little of his own sauce, he got on the sauce a little. He got hooked on his own product. And it offended him that there's somebody smarter. I think it kind of offended him. In any case, at one point, according to legend, which our author doesn't seem to buy, Tesla says that he was told, you do this particular job and I'll pay you $50,000, which is a jack ton of money back then. He did the job. He's like, where's my money? And Edison's like, you don't understand American humor. And he's like, get out of here. I'm not going to pay you. And that was enough. And he's like, I'm out. I'm completely out of this. The two were never really going to work well enough together. Tesla didn't like the way Edison worked. Edison would just grind at a problem. So if you had a needle in a haystack, this is what Tesla says. He would just pull one, straw out at a time until he got a needle. He goes, he doesn't do any theory. He doesn't do any calculating that could save him the time it would take to do it one at a time. And Edison called Tesla a poet of electricity, which ended up kind of being accurate. It's kind of cool. But from there, our boy Tesla goes to Westinghouse. Now, Westinghouse is a good guy. Westinghouse is some of the first to, invent like days off for his employees. He'll pay them more than they needed to be paid. Lunch breaks, this kind of thing that didn't exist before he started doing it. All of these things cost him money, but he just did it. So when, Tesla comes, he sees the vision. He's like, I like it. And he gives him a lot to get it made. Of course, Edison hears about Tesla there, and then here starts our electric wars. And this is the battle for the format that will take over. Now, Edison thought it's just a battle. He was suing everyone on he invented the light bulb when everyone's saying, no, I can use it. I made my own. Because this is what they do. You would buy someone's pen, and then you would like, I'll add this little metal thing to it. Now patent that pen and just start making it and say, these are my pens. They're nothing like his. They would just steal your crap if they could. Whatever it was. So people were stealing these light bulbs and saying, yeah, I'll make them. I'll make them and sell them and say I invented them. He was suing all of them to say, I made it. And he thought, if I get control of the light bulb, then I'll be able to control the source. Meaning, there's no need for you to even put in an AC generator if I don't let you use a light bulb. That's what he thought. Westinghouse understood it was sort of the other way around. It was always going to be delivery. He didn't even worry about it really too much. He would fight back from pride. He would say, these are lies. I think Edison like snuck a lawyer out to try and concoct these, horror stories, saying this kid got electrocuted and stuff. So Westinghouse would fight back, but in his mind, he always knew the better technology is going to win. So it didn't matter if brass has been the best for a while. Steel swords cut through brass. Brass isn't going to continue. Steel wins out. He understood AC could deliver electricity further. And that just beats all. There's no way needing to set up a generator every 2 miles was going to beat one generator and 30, 40 miles, 80 miles of line. It was just never going to win. So he didn't really worry too much about it. Now, at some point, there was sort of a banking crisis because everyone was, riding the lightning. Paying stuff with future stuff that don't exist. All kind of not kosher business practices were going on. So when there was a banking crisis in England, it shook in America. And that shake made a lot of funding dry up. And Westinghouse was not beyond being affected. He went to bankers. He went to friends. He couldn't get any money. He was going to be under. And at the last, he just straight up goes to Tesla. And he says, I can't pay you. I know this AC thing's happening. I know you own this much of the patent. If I pay you, the company doesn't function anymore. And Tesla's like, so if you pay me, there's no company. But if you don't pay me, you could still run the company. He's like, yes. Tesla got the deal. Just tore it up right there. He says, we're not going to worry about that then. And to Westinghouse's credit, he did continue to fund the AC. It's the only reason that company still exists. Or existed. I'm not sure. Tesla's main goal was to get his AC thing running. We then get, the difference, the thing that made Tesla's idea better than the Italian guy's AC current system. They both used a transformer. And they both used AC current. The thing is, he made his with like a dual wave of some kind. I don't understand. Probably more complicated than theirs. In that when one goes down, the other comes up or something to this effect. In any case, from top to bottom, Tesla's setup was just going to be more efficient. They tried it in Colorado, on a Colorado mine. They were worried that, the winter would damage the line. Nothing affected this thing. It's Tesla. He made it, and it works exactly as it should. From there, they get the World's Fair, the Chicago World's Fair. It's going to be a massive event. It's kind of cool. But that someone needs to light it. They want it lit. And so now here's the fight between him and Edison. And Edison is just running all kind of dirty tactics. At one point, he's like electrocuting animals to show, like, look how dangerous AC is. I think this poor dog. They like zap a dog with DC. And the crowd's like, Jesus Christ, stop it already. And then they turn it off and they say, that was X amount of volts the dog took. And he didn't die with DC. And then he half turned the AC on, and of course the dog then just dies. And the person who starts the ASPC is just outraged. And other people were like, that's not even a good test because the dog's weakened from the first electrical mess. And somebody else in the room's like, look, we can't be electrocuting dogs anymore. It's barbaric. So just in trying to sell this hate for AC in the public's mind, Edison like inadvertently invented the ASPCA and got all these animal rights activists to start up, which they needed to be. People were wild out there. I just thought it was hilarious. Somebody at that test then got it in their head like, electrocution can be a more humane way to execute people. And I think we need to try it out. But which one do I use? AC or DC? Now again, Edison thought, if you use AC, it'll look bad. That's how we kill people. And then my DC will win out. So he went on a whole campaign. They took it to court, Westinghouse, and eventually it was, he's using his like stately, I'm the father of electricity aura to get it passed in the court. And it does. The guy, we're like, okay, we're gonna electrocute people now. So a guy comes home and just like kills his wife and turns himself in, and he's like, I killed her, and I did it on purpose, and you can kill me now. And you might as well use that new electrical thing. Flat out, this is what he did. Just unrepentant murder. So they lock him in the chair, and the last thing he says is like, well, it's a good thing that I'm getting this electrocution. Let's get this over with quickly. Turn the switch on, and a horror show ensues. You're not exactly sure how much. You see the body do all the horrible convulsing that it does. The doctor gets close and he's like, he's dead. They shut the switch off. But he's still like bleeding from a cut. And so they're like, dear God, he's still alive. Somebody else in the room's like, turn it back on. They crank it back up. Now you're cooking the guy. People are throwing up. It's an absolute horror show. We get the guy dead, right? He deserved it. You don't kill your wife for no random reason. You shouldn't kill her for a good reason. Don't kill people. But he's a dirty murderer, so, But what's funny to me is the guy in the room who wanted electric executions watched the whole ordeal, and he's like, I still think that's the way to go. And he was right. We ended up electrocuting people for, a good chunk of years here in America. Probably all over the world. I don't know. So we have the World's Fair. I believe there was a concern amongst them that Edison wouldn't let him use the light bulb. And so I remember the story. They don't really cover it as much in this. But Tesla essentially like goes to his room and he's like, I'll make a new light bulb that doesn't interfere with the patent. He goes into his room, comes back with a halogen light. Is it a halogen? The one that they use in all like the businesses, the long pole filled with gas, no filament whatsoever. And he could just hold it and be near electricity and it just light up, and he could just light up the whole area. I think he lit up an exhibit or two with these halogen lights. Just like that. Like it was no problem at all. Of course, he ended up letting them use the Edison light bulb, so these halogens weren't everywhere. But it's just how far ahead this fool was than everyone else. We have next, the last sort of big point in the book was the Niagara Falls as a power plant. They wanted to use the falls to power an electric generator. And there was a big to do about this. It was kind of funny. These people at Niagara Falls brought in all the scientists and said, okay, explain to me your tech, and I'll see if I want to use it. They all explained it. The last second, they're like, okay, I don't need any of you. I have a doctor here named Ted. He's going to invent the whole thing. Everybody's like, really? We just laid out all our eggs, and now all of a sudden you're going to make an omelet? Really? Yeah, that's what they did. He ended up trying to piecemeal something together. Of course, it wasn't going to work right. They ended up pairing up with Westinghouse anyway, and Tesla come in, hone the system in. And I believe that thing ran for a good long time. We end up with an H.G. Wells, the author. He walked in there and he was describing to us what it was like. He goes, there's no smoke, there's no dirt, it's quiet. He says there are these noble masses of machinery. He says there's no clangor. He called it will made visible, which I thought was very cool. The world just wasn't used to seeing machinery that size, that quiet. And of course, the amount of power it generated and how far it could go, I think they were charging like Buffalo. They were like, the entire city could just run on the electricity this thing produced. Made them tons of money. Our Edison gets his business, taken from him. He ends up rich, so you don't have to cry too much for him. But they do a hostile takeover situation. And then the new company is not even called like the Edison Company. It's called General Electric. Yeah, that General Electric. And he's sort of ousted. And as much as he won, I guess, the electric war, saying that his is the light bulb, he ends up losing out in every other respect. And then, fades. Westinghouse ends up dying rich. They don't go too much into the end of Westinghouse. Tesla ends up living out the rest of his life in a 5-star hotel because he's rich and he's like, this is an efficient way to live. And he had his own shop for a while, but it burnt down. I know, tragic to all of humanity. It wasn't even one of his things that burnt it. It was a downstairs tenant. Didn't clean the chimney or some mess, and it just burnt the building down. And then from then on, it was just Tesla in this hotel. Now, he doesn't cover this, but I've heard this on other spots where there's what do you call it, urban legend or a conspiracy theory about, because Tesla lived like another 30, 40 years or whatever it was. And he just would write in these notebooks. And he'd come down to New York events and give these crazy speeches on, the universe is full of electricity. He had ideas, again, not in the book, about, what was his big tower? He wanted to make a big tower that would have just ambiently electrified the entire area. He could have done the whole state. He could have done the whole country. Sort of the same way, all our phones can charge wirelessly. He'd have done the whole thing. And he was talking about, radio, phone, all of that. JP Morgan didn't want it. It's a side issue. I'm getting distracted now. But the conspiracy theory is that these notebooks, that he died in the hotel, and the CIA came and gathered these notebooks, and that's the last anyone's ever seen them. Possible? Who knows? But it's a lot funner if it's true. It sort of ends there, though. Not there, because he didn't have that point. It ends on the Niagara Falls working, and sort of electric wars are over. It's just a nice, interesting book on sort of a quick run of electricity. And obviously, we're in Tesla's future, not Edison's. Edison thought light bulb. Tesla was always thinking of the future. He thought this electricity, the power that it can generate, will be able to solve all of the working class person's problems. He said at one point, the hard day's labor in the future will be the pressing of a button. And I'm like, how true is that? Very cool. A worthy read. Not long. Okay. Now, for the wonderful ads. These are my books. Nothing in them is accurate or real because it's all made up. I made it all up. It's a complete work of fiction? Yeah, non-fiction's not fake. I always get those confused. I don't know why. You can buy these. Yeah, just buy them. Just do it. Okay, people. I will see you all next week.